All right, hey guys, what's going on? My name is Carlton Green. I think there was another Carlton in the course somewhere, but I'm Carlton Green. Um, I am doing chapters 4 and 5 this week, so we're going to go ahead and talk a little bit about that. Uh, Hopefully, I can get some talking points going on the video as well. I saw Charlene posted some of those. I had a few going, but it just got a little too jumbled up. So I was trying to cover everything from chapters 4 and 5 when I realized I only needed to do 2 to 3 concepts. So got some stuff written down. Hopefully, I can tailor it up and get it over to you guys when I post the video. But as for now, I'm going to keep it simple. Chapter 4, I just want to talk about systems. The systems perspective on organizations and communication was the chapter's title. So we're just going to talk about systems, the systems approach, the general systems theory that they came up with, biologists came up with, and a little bit about interdependence. And then from there, we'll just bounce on over to chapter 5, talk about cultures, organizational culture, and the elements that go into making a culture, the cultural element. Again, I should know I'm not a teacher. I'm not good at this. Um, so if anything you see is wrong, or if I say anything wrong, just go ahead and comment in the discussion. Just say, hey, Carlton, got it wrong here. This is how it should be, or this is what it is. But hopefully I got everything right. Hopefully I make sense. Hopefully we can flow through this cleanly. And then, yeah, I'll go ahead and open up the discussion. Hopefully, we can have some good discussion. I know last week I enjoyed talking to both of you. We had some good points. We challenged each other. I think you guys made me reevaluate some thoughts I had. So I think it's just good that we can encourage each other to look at things differently, take some different perspectives and different viewpoints. So let's just try to keep it going again this week. So let's jump into it. Chapter 4. Let's talk about first systems approach so we can understand what a system is. Systems approach is a set of parts working together to create a functional whole. That functional whole is a system. Now, the book gave the example of BMW, their slogan, the ultimate driving machine. So, what makes BMW the ultimate driving machine? Is it the brakes? Is it the luxury features? Is it the radio? Is it the aerodynamic design of the car? It's not just one of these things, it's all of these things that come together to make a system. Or make BMW the ultimate driving machine, which is a good example of a system approach, creating a system. So again, BMW, all these quality, luxury, amazing features they have play a part together in creating BMW's ultimate driving machine. And this is just a way of looking at the system approach again, a set of parts working together to create a functional whole. That functional whole is a system. Now, it's important to note that system is not just the sum of parts coming together. It's not just adding things together and saying, okay, this is a system. Things do have to have a relationship in order to be a system. So I'll read this excerpt from the book. The functional whole is called a system, and in that system, the whole is more than the sum of its parts. As the sociologist Walter Buckley put it, the more than points to the fact of organization, which imparts to the aggregate or the combination of characteristics that are not only different from, but also often not found in the components alone. And the sum of parts must be taken to mean not their numerical addition, but their unorganized aggregation. So again, it's not just, let's look at BMW again. It's not just saying, okay, we got a nice brake, we got a nice engine, we got a good uh, feature going here and there, and the car's design is nice. Now we got ourselves the ultimate driving machine. No, all these things play a part together. They're organized together to form this relationship to create this ultimate driving machine. So, for instance, you put your foot on the gas, it gets this nice engine going, which gets the nice tires going, and the aerodynamic feature design rather of the car cuts through the wind. So now you just have this great driving experience. So all these things are working together. They're organized and put together to work together and form this relationship. Therefore, you get the ultimate driving machine with BMW. But if we continue with what the book says, in other words, organization makes a social system more than just its individual pieces. So if we look at it from an organizational standpoint, um, it's not just saying, hey, I have people working, I have a group of people here. It's these people who have a relationship, they work together, which form a system. So for example, um, earlier this year, I used to work for, well, late last year and until this year, I used to work for Tesla. We laid a lot of people off, whatever. But my role there was I was an advisor. So basically, I would work with the finance team. Let me back up a little bit. So when people order a Tesla, it comes to me, and then I have to send it out to every department so that we can get the car to the person wherever they are. So the cars are made in California. Um, they place the order, and so for me, I would reach out to the finance team to ensure that the in-house financing or third-party financing was taken care of. Reach out to the factory because all the cars were custom built, made to order. I would reach out to the ground team just to make sure, hey, when we ship the car out to you guys, someone's going to be there at the store so the person can come pick up the car. Got to reach out to the transportation team because, again, cars are made in California, so we got to ship it to wherever in the country you are. So, yeah, we had a lot of different aspects of the company working together. Again, we had a transportation team, finance team, DMV team, getting the car licenses, all these parts playing together. I was the center of it, but again, this is a system, all these parts are working together. So you're doing this to get this done. You're doing this to get this done. I'm working here to do this for you. You're doing this for me. Ultimately, we're coming together. We're forming this system. At the end of the day, this is how it works to get people a car at Tesla. So that was just an example of systems. But yeah, so again, it's not just having a bunch of things and saying, this is going to work. No, it's these things have to work together. You have to have a relationship together to work in order for it to be a system. Now, let's take it a step further, though. Go ahead and talk about the general systems theory. This was founded by two biologists. So this theory came from looking at living systems, such as the human body, for example. Biologists Ludwig von Bertalanffy and J.G. Miller. Um, they were looking at living systems basically, and they said, for example, in the human body, it's not just the respiratory system that gets the body going. It's not just the digestive system that gets it going. It's all the systems coming together, working together in order to keep the body going. Now, again, it's not just taking it a step further. It's not just these things working together, keeping the body going, but they're dependent on each other. So, for example, we know this with our bodies. If the immune system shuts down, a lot of other parts of our body shut down. If we can't digest food, a lot of other parts are going to shut down. So they're very interdependent of each other. They rely on each other to function, rely on each other to work in order to keep the body going. So the book even referred to this example as these being subsystems, subparts, whatever you want to call it. But if we take a overall look as far as this goes towards organizations, um, again, take my example from Tesla. We had a lot of parts working together to get someone a car. These were subparts, these were subdivisions, these were sub systems working together to get the whole system to work in order to get someone their car. Hope that makes sense. So yeah, just a bunch of things coming together, being dependent on each other as well. Again, my example from Tesla, if the finance team didn't get the financing taken care of and everybody else was down, we couldn't get this person their car. If the DMV team didn't have the things licensed and registered, ready to go, we couldn't get this person the car. Of course, if the factory didn't build the car and everybody else had everything taken care of, still couldn't get this person the car. So everybody was dependent on each other. We were working together in this system to make everything work. So that's what the general system theory is. A bunch of parts coming together that are interdependent of each other to function as a whole. Taking as the book defined, a holistic view or a holistic perspective of something. Noticing that it's a bunch of little parts that are dependent upon on each other to get the whole working. So, now let's take this back into human context or their organizational context. There was another biologist, Lewis Thomas. He created the hierarchy of general systems theory, and we can go see that on table 4-1 in our books or in our readings, whatever you have, ebooks, readings, books. I have a book. Um, but he basically gave, I'm not going to read his whole excerpt, but the consensus or the overall theme was that he placed humans third from last on his hierarchy of general systems theory, basically saying that humans lacked a lot of interdependence on each other. So he put at the top static structures such as atoms and all these things. They work together more than humans can. Take a clock, for example, which was number two. Clocks. If one part stops working in the clock, the whole thing of a clock is going to stop working. Animals, again, they're above humans. Even though they can't talk or communicate like humans can, they depend on each other more than the humans do. And so if we look at this in an organizational place, it was just summed up by the ambiguity, I can't say that word very well, but ambiguity of our human communication. So, we say one thing, but it can mean something else. It can be interpreted as something else. I could say, I can eat a cow right now because I'm so hungry. And, you can interpret that as, oh, is he really going to eat a cow? Or is he really just that hungry? So That was what they summed it up as, that human communication can be interpreted different ways, which in turn, as they summed it up, social organizations, in contrast to physical or mechanical structures, are loosely coupled systems. So there are a lot of things that work better than the human systems, social structures that humans have, social organizations that humans have, simply because of the way we communicate. Again, that clock example. A clock, they depend on each other. It's like, hey, if one part stops working, another part's going to stop working, and these things need to all function together in order for it to work. Humans don't necessarily work that way. We can kind of function alone, away from each other. We can, we're not so interdependent on each other, even though we do need each other to survive one way or another, especially in an organization. As I gave my example again from Tesla, we needed everybody playing their part. But again, you can always compensate for people. Compensate in machinery. Animals can't really compensate, excuse me. So that's why humans were placed so low on that hierarchy of general system theory. Now, um, so yeah, that's just general thoughts on system approach, how systems play a part, what a system is, and then that general systems theory, which I think is just very big, and noticing that parts have to be interdependent, just as the body is. And so from there, let's just talk a little bit about culture. And so culture was defined in the book as meaningful orders of people and things. You can learn about a company culture by not just what they say and do, but more how they conduct themselves. So you can look at if they have a lot of staff meetings, that's the culture of the company. If they, you know, there are a lot of old people and they don't really hire the youth, and that's the culture of the company. Working at Tesla again. Before I went to Tesla, I worked for Penske. I don't know if you guys know the big yellow trucks that drive around town, moving trucks, all these things. The culture there was kind of a lot of old guys. It was done one, they weren't changing with the times. You had to wear a suit and tie. You would be dealing with cars, climbing under trucks, climbing on top of trucks, working in the yard sometimes. We would have to be in suit and tie, and that was just the culture there, and I just really couldn't get behind that. But then that Tesla, it's kind of like wear what you want. They let you make your own schedule, come to work, within the hours that they were open. Put in your time. You can take lunch whenever. You can take your breaks whenever. But work just had to get done, so they weren't too strict there. And that was the culture there. It was really a good, fun culture. I don't work there anymore because, of course, if you follow the news, they're just laying off people as they become more robotic and automated, which is cool. But yeah, so culture is just what defines the company. What is the culture there? Um, so let's see. I got some more notes here. Organizational culture. So if we look at that, it stands for the actions, ways of thinking, practices, the stories, artifacts, the characteristics a particular organizational has. So again, just looking at an organization as a whole, what do they represent? What do they talk about? What do they show? You may walk into uh, look at the culture of Apple. We can all go into an Apple store and you can just see how they have a design there. That's the culture, a futuristic, young vibe going on, fun place, welcoming place. That's the Apple culture. The book gave some examples about, Pixar, for example, how they say the decision making there is like improv comedy. That's their culture. So what is the culture? Culture just defines a company as what they represent, who they are, how they act, how they talk. And this can be examined through a number of ways, whether, like the book said, you can pull up and just see how the parking lot looks. You can see how the people are dressing. You can see what they have in the offices. You can see how the offices are designed. Do they have cubicles? Do people have offices? Is it like a floating office system where you don't really have an office, but if you need an office, you can take one. Managers are working side by side with employees and so culture can just be a broad thing, but every company has a culture. Um, and so the book gave some cultural elements that I really did want to talk about as well. And then we'll just go ahead and wrap this thing up because I see my time is going. Um, so there were a few cultural elements. The first one they gave was metaphors. Again, I gave the example already of Pixar saying that the decision making is like improv comedy. Of course, it's not really improv comedy in their decision making, but they're just saying, hey, it's flowing. We're spurting things out. This is how it goes. So using metaphors, um, you know, like sorry, Apple again. They have geniuses, of course, however you define geniuses, they don't really mean you're going to walk in and meet with a genius, a superb, smart person, but they just want you to know, hey, this person's a genius. They're going to be able to help you with whatever you got. So that's just metaphors using. So you can define a culture by metaphors. Um, and yeah, so next thing is rituals. What do they practice constantly? So is it a lot of staff meetings going on? Is that what's weekly? Do you have a staff meeting every Monday? Is that the culture? Do they do birthday celebrations? Is that a ritual? Hey, when it's a birthday, we got to celebrate. Do we do Christmas parties? Do we do conferences? Do we do conventions? All these things play. So that makes up the company culture as well. What's constant? What's consistent? What's always happening? What do they do repetitively as far as just event wise or meeting wise or just something that's consistent. What's the ritual? Storytelling is another thing that goes into one of these elements. You got to tell some stories. People love stories. Um, I've had someone tell me before that people relate most to stories because even as kids, we would always say, "Mommy and Daddy, tell me a story. Read me a book. I want to know a story." The Three Little Pigs, Three Bears, Little Red Riding Hood, whatever the story is. People relate to stories just because that's what we've had our whole lives mainly. And so, people just love stories. And so, what kind of stories are is the company telling? Um, Take for instance Disney. Disney tells the story of fairy tales and all these things. That's the culture. A happy environment, a fairy tale, the happiest place on earth. That's the kind of storytelling that's going on at Disney. Artifacts, these are tangible or physical features of an organization which contribute to the culture. So, office decor, do you walk into a building and it's decorated, or is it just plain with the company logo? Can't do any of that. Again, like I said, I used to work at Penske. There was no decorating anything. It was plain buildings. It was just you walk in. Here is what you can buy: tape, rope, boxes for packing. There was no decorating anything for the holidays, none of that. But then working at Tesla, it was like everybody could decorate how they wanted. It was just individuality. So artifacts, you could walk in and just know, hey, this was a culture. Like everybody's encouraged to be themselves. Um, Everybody had things on their desk. Like I said, one person had like a ton of Beanie Babies. Another person had everything Mickey Mouse. Some people would do tons of anime. It was just being you through artifacts. So that was what the culture was. You can tell the culture of Tesla by the artifacts people had. Heroes and heroines. I like the example the book gave again. Steve Jobs, that's the hero of Apple. They tell that story all the time. They still ride with that now, even though Apple's kind of not, living up to the hype of what Steve Jobs used to have. But when you think Apple, you think Steve Jobs. And if you work there, I'm pretty sure they encourage that a lot. Steve Jobs this, Steve Jobs that. He paved the way for this. And so he's one of the heroes there. And that's the culture right there. You can tell that culture. From the outside looking in, you can say, okay, if that's the coach, Steve Jobs is the culture of Apple, you can kind of get an idea of how Apple's run and what's going on there. Performances. As the book said, a great example of the performance of identity can be seen, for example, in hospital rounds, where less experienced physicians are called on to describe specific cases and receive immediate feedback regarding how well they talk like a doctor. People reviewing performance. Just how well you do. You can kind of notice things in the culture by the feedback they're giving or just the passion people have, as the book describes. It's a lot of things that go into performance, but um, you can look at it mainly like a sports team, for example. One team performs better than the other. They're passionate more. They perform better. That's the culture of that organization. That organization is a winning culture. Based through you can base that on their performance. So there you go. And then values. Just what do you value? Just what do you value? So, do you value your employees? Do you value your bottom line? Do you value making money? Do you value your clients? Do you value your customers? So, what do you value? So, um, I'll wrap it up on that because wow, I barely had anything written on my papers, and I see I'm going on way too long now. So, culture. I think just culture influences systems. You can get a well working system based on the culture you have. So that's where I'm going to start my discussion off. Do you feel that culture plays a huge part into a system? Or it could even be vice versa. Do you think a good system creates a good culture? So I'll end on that because I'm going on 20 minutes. Thank you guys if you watched the whole thing. If you didn't watch the whole thing, I understand because I thought this was going to be like 10 minutes. I was timing myself earlier. I didn't expect it to be this long. If it didn't make any sense, I apologize again. I'm not a teacher. If I said anything crazy, please correct me. Help me understand a little bit more. But yeah, guys, there you go. Thanks for tuning in and can't wait to see the rest of the videos and let's have some good discussion.